I'm your Chairtalk host Nemanja, and this is retrospective from the last week episode that we recorded with Vukan Simić from Fishing Booker.
I can say that the innovation that I'm most proud of is that we managed to build a company that offers chartered fishing trips from Belgrade, which doesn't have a coastline, and that we managed to build up a team that's the leader in the market. And most of the team prior to this job had never done saltwater fishing in their life. We try to innovate on several tracks simultaneously. First, there's the quick, cheap experiments that you run that don't really need a lot of planning, in hopes of over time building up the compounding optimizations that would allow you to grow. And another track is strategic innovation. So I see a future where these types of marketplaces increase in size, and they basically digitize our access to various services and products around the world.
This is Chair, place where we discuss innovations. And today we are going to talk how to innovate in agriculture, how to use digital to tackle the challenges in the industry that is almost old as a humankind itself. On this topic, I have a great pleasure to talk with Aleksandar Bijelic, Chief Digital Officer in MK Group. Aleksandar, as a CDO, is in charge of digital transformation through defining strategy and supporting execution of strategic projects. MK Group, where he is on this position for 3 years now, is one of the leading holding companies in Serbia and the region. This system employs more than 7,000 people with more than 75 affiliated companies that operate within the system. It has become a leader in 3 key areas of businesses: agriculture, tourism, and banking. So, Aleksandar, welcome to Chair. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Thank you very much for having us here. It's going to be a very nice conversation, I hope.
I'm sure that it's going to be. But at the beginning, before we move to our main subject, I want to ask you a question, personal question. What is innovation for you? Since you have a huge experience in working with Kearney, Nielsen, Deloitte, you have shaped your apprehension of innovation. So what is the innovation for you?
Well, the innovation itself for me is a holistic, let's say, approach. It's not one word, it's not one thing. If I have to say about innovation, I would say it has 3 key elements: people, technology, and processes. And I didn't say people at first just without any intentions. The point is that people are the main part of the innovation, because we can bring the newest technology, we can bring the newest process. If you don't change the mindset of the people, and if the people are not in the heart of the change, it's not going to happen. So the most important part of the innovation for me is that is first directed towards the, let's say, positive change, because you can be innovative and don't achieve any change. It has to be positive change, and it has to help people to deliver more and to be able to enjoy more. For me, that's one part of the main part of the innovation. So people at the front, and then you can do all the other stuff. You know, people make mistake when they say we need the newest technology. Sometimes we can achieve more with the old technology, just taking another view, taking another position on the things that we are discussing about, and then making sure that it delivers positive change.
So you guys innovated how you work in the field. Basically, you uberized your fleet for sugar beet harvest. Explain to me how this differs from classical fleet management. Where is that innovation here?
Good question. Well, the innovation itself is tremendous, because once you do a fleet management, which is already a standard process as it is, you are driving your fleet trucks or vehicles, you're driving them on the regular roads. And what you need to do is just connect to either Bing or Google Maps or whatever, here maps. Then you just need to set up the communication between the devices and everything else, and that's it. For us, uberizing the agriculture is totally different thing, because first thing is you don't have roads. What we had to do in order to achieve the uberizing of our fleet is to draw our roads. We had to map every single road in the fields, so that's a pawn road, right? And then you have to take into consideration the weather forecast, You have to take the weather condition, because once you have a truck of 40 tons driving on the pond road, on the land road, and the rain starts falling, that road,
mud and everything.
the mud, the everything, that road can become unusable. And even if the road is usable, you have to make sure that every single vehicle in the fleet takes the same route, because those roads are often narrow. And if the vehicle comes from the different directions, because for him it's better, it's easier, or something else,
Driver wanted like that, right?
driver wanted like that, he can really block. And Uberizing the standard fleet, it's easy. You say, this is the address, this is the number. In the field, there are no numbers. So you have to make sure you send them the proper GPS coordinate and make sure that everything is working as perfect in order to deliver. And it looks simple, but we are talking a large scale operations. Whenever you innovate, you need to make sure that you know about what kind of operations are we talking about. So here we are talking about 800 vehicles a day going 2 or 3 rounds, delivering enormous amount of sugar beet from the field directly to the factory. And you have to make sure that this sugar beet doesn't stay too long, because every minute, every second, every hour, it counts. As long as it's taken out of the ground, it starts decaying, it starts losing some of its valuable minerals and valuable sugar content that we need. So we need to make sure that from the moment that we send heavy machinery to take the sugar beet out, to coordinate with those who are loading into the trucks. The trucks are there on time, that those things happen to deliver, to be able to send them to the factory, and all this has to be accompanied with the weather conditions. So the planning for this happens every morning.
And it's enormous.
And it's enormous. 800 vehicles, somebody has a flat tire, somebody has some challenges. So it's all big issue. And for us, one really important thing that we achieved, and it's a side effect. We helped people living in the cities near our factories. Because in the old time, when we were doing all this manually, we would have times when the trucks would be blocked the whole city, because it's such a longer queue. Now we are planning it in such a manner through this Uberizing. So every truck driver has its tablet. He receives the order where to go. He confirms once he's on the field. We are now trying to make sure that there is not too many vehicles waiting in front of the factories. So we don't block the local roads. We help the local people there in order to help them. And on the other hand, we help the people working those vehicles. Because at the end of the day, the trucker can see that there is a long queue going to happen. He can stop and go, take a coffee or take a break. He doesn't need to drive to the factory and then stand there for a few hours. So for everybody in the process, we try to help in order to enable. On the other hand, it draws the decrease of cost for us, and we really improve the efficiency of our management.
Yeah, that was my next question, because as you said, that it's a huge innovation, and that process that you changed basically how you do sugar beet harvest. What kind of productivity and cost cutting have you managed to accomplish with this? And maybe you can tell me, even before you decided to start with this Uberizing your fleet, what goals you wanted to achieve with this?
Well, the first thing what we wanted to achieve with Uberizing this fleet, and this started a long time before I joined the MK Group. So let's say that there are a lot of people in the MK Group who really worked on this innovation even before I came. I just added a few touches and helped them maybe to improve certain parts. But the most important part is not to lose the content of the sugar beet. Because, as I said, once you take it out of the ground, you have very limited amount of time that you have to deliver to the factory and start processing.
It's like decoying and...
Yes. So that's one thing. Second thing, we wanted to decrease the cost and enable the operations, because previously you would need more than 800 trucks. You would need 1,000, 200, 300 trucks, and that's almost impossible to get it in Serbia at certain point of times, because as we know, there is a huge lack of offer, or lack of the available truck drivers on the market. Some of them left, some of them are working on in other industries. Because at the time when we are taking the sugar beet, at the same time it's happening the picking up of corn, picking up of wheat and everything else. So the huge demand on the transport industry creates a lot of pressure. So for us was decreasing the number of vehicles that we need. With this, we automatically reduce the number of CO2. We automatically reduce the impact on the society environment. And for 3, we stop decaying of the sugar beet, and with this we increase the level of sugar that we can produce from the same amount of the sugar beet. So that's win-win for all of us, because for us as a factory, we get more sugar from the same beet. For the people who are doing this for us and sowing the sugar beet, they're getting more money for the same type of product. So it's a win-win for everybody.
I want to move to innovation process itself, and how you told me that this innovation started a long time before you came to MK Group, but I want to talk about how you innovate from your position, because basically Chief Digital Officer is on the brink of innovation by definition. I want you to share with me how you decide with innovations where to go next, what to do next. Especially when we put the equation that you're working in such a huge system as MK Group. And of course, because it's such a huge system, there's high stakes all the time.
Yes. Well, if I say how we do innovation in the MK Group, I will start from the beginning. 35 years ago, Mr. Miodrag Kostić was the first innovator, let's say, in having a vision how to start this company. And working side by side with him is something that generates in your DNA needs for innovation. So we need to move forward. We as a group, we have almost like a mandate or obligatory that we need to improve every day, every moment we work. And it's something that is highly encouraged in our company. So on one side, it's quite challenging working in such a big company with such a diversified businesses such as agriculture, finances, or tourism. But on the other hand, it brings you ability to innovate, in a sense, even connecting something that is a standard practice in one of the industries, you can bring it to the other industry and really use it. So let's say fleet management, it's something that is usually in the transport, but when you bring it to the agriculture, it significantly boosts. Weather forecast or meteo station. In the agriculture, it's a standard, but when we bring it to the Carnex, who is the largest food producer in Serbia, right? In a meat producing industry, you have significant jump and significant increment in the results that you achieve. So for us, the people are the most important. As I said in the beginning, we have a really, let's say, really huge number of colleagues or big number of colleagues who are very specialized in their field of works. They're experts. They're on the field constantly. They're in connection not just with the industry and practice itself. They're sometimes in connection with our competitors. They're in connection with the market. They're in connection with our customers. And all the ideas are coming from there. And from my position, I'm almost like an ambassador. So it's not my job to come and say, this is the biggest idea that we're going to do. It's to emphasize the process and to make sure that every single of our colleagues is included in this process. We gather those ideas, we evaluate them, we do classical cost-benefit analysis, but on the other side, we don't just do cost-benefit, because you saw some of the projects we did in the past, nobody believed in them, right? We are brave enough to start totally new fields and to start totally new, let's say, industries, but we are smart enough to know when to stop. So with this ability to know when to stop and be brave enough to try calculated risks, we are fast enough to move. And one of the really big advantages of working in MK Group, if you're working in large corporations, major decisions about innovations are happening in Brussels, are happening in London, are happening in Paris. Here we have a really benefit of working in Serbia. So if I need to do some innovation and I'm 100% sure that it's going to be the next big thing, and the colleagues with who I work are making sure that this is all looked at from all different angles, we go to Belgrade office and we say to talk to our vice president, Mr. Aleksandar Kostić, or with Miodrag Kostić, and say, hey, this is the next big thing. These are all the analysis we did. We are 100% sure this is done. And if we are done our job properly, then the answer in 90% of the cases is yes. So it's much faster. For us, it's much quicker to start to experiment. But on the other hand, we carry a really huge liability. There is no big corporations to cover behind and say, but it gives you ability to be on the, as you said, on the cutting edge. So the process is very straightforward. Anybody can send the idea. He needs to elaborate, and then we start working on it, how to make sure it happens.
You just told me how it's overall in the MK Group system it's organized and how you do that. But can you share with me your closest team? It's not you guys are there for the innovations to be creative. Innovation can jumpstart in the MK group. How your closest team is organized to achieve that?
Well, again, my whole closest team is the whole company.
Okay.
Right? So it's very simple. I'll explain you on one really good project that our colleague from corporate communication started a few years ago, and it's called Launch Idea. So we have this internal event where you can apply once a year to launch your own idea, and the company obliged to invest up to 100,000 euros if the idea is selected. So within your own companies, anybody, exactly anybody, can send the idea. He needs to draft very quick idea, so 2 pages A4 letter, and to explain. And if these ideas are good enough to pass to the first, let's say, first round, then they get assigned mentors. And here is one of my most important roles. Together with the colleagues from the top team, from the CEO team and C-level team, we choose the most appropriate mentors to help these guys drive the idea towards the full-scale project proposal. So then they are supposed to write the budgets, then they are supposed to write all the constraints, then they are supposed to propose how this could be done. And again, they're coming in front of the whole leadership team of the whole MK group. So not just MK, but MK Carnex, AgroGlobe, Sunoco, all these MK Agriculture, even the finance team, so AIK Banka and Gorenska Bank. And then they are defending in front of this team almost like a startup pitch. So what they're doing is they're defending the idea, and then we select the best. And top 3 get financed. And not just financed, then it's a mandatory for my team as well to make sure those ideas happen. And through this is why I'm not saying about few people working closely with me. I'm talking about the whole organization is behaving like a big entrepreneur. Because as I said in the beginning, entrepreneurship is in the DNA of the MK group.
It sounds like a large-scale innovation lab inside group itself.
It is. In one sense, it's tough to manage all those ideas. On the other hand, it's very challenging and it's very empowering, because you know that we had people in one of our hotels that launched an idea that was pitched in front of the CEO. And the person in that hotel, if you look at the hierarchy, then you come to a position that is very low in the hierarchy. And they were able to pitch in the top 6 ideas, I think 2 years ago, top 6 ideas, and they were ranked among the top 6 ideas. Do you know how empowering is that? You don't need to write, 200-page proposal to happen. Of course, that when we are doing projects which are a few $1 million or a couple, of course you have to have a good cost-benefit analysis, all the financial. But for us, it's good that from the day one, we teach all our colleagues that investment innovation is a process which is similar even if you invest €1 or 100 million euros. Because with this, we empower them to be able to push ideas forward. And then that's for me is a really important part.
You mentioned your CEO and pitching the project in front of him. And I want to mention him from the other perspective. You have a change on the top recently. You have a new CEO, Mihailo Jankovic, and he's well known as a guy with innovative management style and striving for excellence. I'm sure that MK Group is going to innovate with him on the wheel even more. So please share with me, what are you working on right now and what will go out next in terms of innovation?
Well, yes, having Mihailo joining us as a CEO is a very, very, very big step for us as well. Although, as we said, we are on the brink of innovation anyhow. I cannot share one specific project because there are hundreds of initiatives happening. And then, as we said, through launching idea, we are selecting them year by year by year. There are new things that we can emphasize, and that's going to happen. Digitalization of agriculture, which we believe is the next big thing that will happen in the industries across the world. We can talk about the project that we are doing in our finance division and banking, where I think that they're bringing some of the cutting edge practices to Serbian market. As you know, AIK Banka was one of the first to launch a digital wallet in Serbia, among the first. They are doing some additional new things. They're improving the way how they interact with the customers. And let's say Carnex is now doing full innovation of the products that they are producing. So they are expanding into new products which are not purely connected to meat, because when you say Carnex, everybody connects it to the meat. And Carnex is successfully launched and is now among top players in hummus, is now among top players in the fish pate and similar things. So there are different areas. One of the things that we are focusing on definitely is robotic process automation, where we're trying to help our employees get rid of the dull work, right?
To get more efficient and to
we
get
want
more
to
creative.
we want to have them spend more time on defining what to do next than create reporting. And as you know, I think that the majority companies have 20-30% of their time spending in Excels, and all of this can be done, right? I think that any major company, especially top managers, spends 20-30% of their time in Excel, which is a great tool, by the way. But if you can have, with all the SAPs, all the ERPs, all the BIs and everything else, still the Excel is the king. If you can have a robotic process automation RPA robot doing this for you, and then helping the top management deciding what to do from this report instead of just, that's a really big thing. So we are definitely putting a lot of focus on RPA. We are putting focus on our company, which is a SAP partner, MKIT, is putting a lot of effort on SAP Analytic Cloud, because we believe with the predictions and with the innovations we are happening in there will help us be faster and bring better decision and make sure that we have all the relevant information before happening. And as I mentioned, in agriculture, we are definitely going to look at the geo portal and ability to have all the information in one holistic place. For us, that's really, really important to make it happen. And of course, to make sure that we are following the local regulation, we are doing everything we can to support the ecosystem as well. One of the things that we did in the past 3 years was making sure that all our invoices, incoming and outgoing, can be sent and received in electronic form. You know that Serbia is now in the place where they are supposed to vote a new law on the electronic invoices and all the documents and everything else, and we are already there. We are already prepared. As soon as the law is voted, we can start doing this. So these are the main topics I would focus on.
At the beginning, you mentioned that innovation is for you, among other things, are the people, and you mentioned people at the first place. So I want to ask you about the Digital Academy, and that's something that started in October 2020, right?
Yes. Well, the Digital Academy is our way of, empowering people. We took 12 people who are agronoms by the design and teach them the newest sophisticated technologies. We envision that the agronom in 5, 10, 15 years will not be the person who comes with a car, goes out on the field, takes the soil in their hands, and make analysis out of it. We assume that if the agronom comes to the field, because he will most probably do it with the telemetry from some kind of the devices, he will have a drone with him. He will be able to lift the drone, to send, to analyze, to be able to use satellites, to be able to use advanced technologies in order to make sure it happens and to be more efficient. Because as I said, there are a few things that we need to know about the agriculture. First, it's the most undigitalized industry, and I think it's the ripe for digitalization. Second, there is a nice saying, 3D. It's dull, dirty, and dangerous. So people don't want to work in agriculture, and it's happening across the globe. So I'm not talking about the local region, I'm talking about across the globe. People don't want to work in agriculture because you have to go in your tractor and sit there for 12 hours, right? Instead of being on the tablet and watching Beverly Hills or whatever shows are now popular. Second, it's dangerous, very dangerous. And the third, it's very dirty. So it's not a job that you can go work something, leave the office, and then go with your friends, right? So based on this, it has to happen. So there are a few challenges happening in the agriculture. First is a climate change, right? We are aware that the climate is getting more and more warmer. There is even saying that in Germany, almost all the agriculture faculty have department for tropical plants. Because the Germany predicts that in 10, 15, 20 years, the subtropical climate will come close to Germany. And some of the plants that they never had will become, accessible. So climate change. Second is rising of population. We have to make sure to make some things happen, because the rising population, we will not be able to feed them. And in order for us to answer all these questions and to have tractors which are without the pilots, to have all of these kind of things, we have to train a new kind of agronoms, and we have to help them. Together with the faculties and universities, and we have really close cooperation, but we found a need to do it internally as well. So jointly with the partners and jointly with our team, we are training a new group of agronomes who are going to be familiar with the thing that the tractor is self-driveless. And we already have in MK Group, we have tractors and heavy machinery which are doing 90% of the work already automated. So you bring it into the field and you just take your hands off the wheel because everything else is happening with the autopilot, with the satellite, with the GPS, with the computer who is controlling. Then we already did some experiments with the drones. We already did some other stuff. So it's important for our people to know how to use these technologies in order to make sure that the businesses can perform as usual and can produce more food, which in the end is the most important part.
I always like to finish this chair talks about future, and after everything that you said to me today, I don't think there is a better man to ask a future question. So give me your opinion. What is the next big innovation in agriculture? What we can expect in the future from?
Well, there is not one thing, right? It's a whole ecosystem that is connected, and I do believe it's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. So as we said, we have tractors and heavy machinery who are already doing 90% of, moving, plowing and everything else automatic. We already saw that some producers produce the tractors who don't have a driver, who is fully 100% capable of being driven from tablet. So you're sitting in some office and he's doing it by himself. Of course,
it's not getting dirty anymore, right?
It's not getting dirty. Of course, the regulation has to be in place because I'm pretty much sure nobody would like to see this beast of, a few hundred tons going into a field and then lose connectivity and then, of course, but it's going to become easier. We already see that some manufacturers are testing that you have one driver in one tractor and then fleet of 3 or 4 following him besides. So he has the visual view, he is able to, he's able to control them, but still you don't need 5 tractor drivers. That's one thing. Second thing, agriculture spends a lot of water. And we spoke in one of the conferences previously where we said that 70% of all the water being spent in the world is being done by agriculture. 20% is being done by industry, and only a few percent is being spent by human usage. So we need to make sure somehow to become more sustainable in agriculture, to spend less water. Of course, you can't stop giving the water to the plants because then you will not have the results. But we have to find new ways. We have to find to be more efficient. And the last but not the least in the agriculture is the usage of telemetry technology. I've just read that in 2009 there was a big article about telemetry in agriculture. So usage of drones, reporting of the tractors, fleet management in tractors. And they said it's a good thing, but it will take a lot of time before it happens. Because, one device at that time costed hundreds and thousands. Now it costs nothing.
Yeah.
So the technology is already here. We need people who are able to use it. And this is why the MK Academy is for us the most important part, because if we want to empower our people to be able to use the technology, and then we can step further. And this is why the biggest things will happen, as I said, automation of the agriculture machinery, drones, sustainable agriculture. Even vertical farming is now being mentioned as a way how to, preserve because there is no more land. However, I'm skeptical at this point about the prices, but who knows, in 10 years, maybe I'm pretty much sure we will find a way how to make it happen. So definitely digitalization of agriculture is coming, and I think it's coming sooner than we expected. And I truly believe that in the future, I always quote this sentence I heard on one conference, is the speed of the changes in the future will never be as slow as it is today, because it will just happen more and more, and it will be faster and faster.
Thank you so much for this conversation today. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure that our viewers are going to enjoy it as well. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and see you next Thursday when we talk about some new innovations. Thank you so much.